Boom, what's going on, everybody? We are here today to discuss Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, brand new Planet of the Apes movie that just came out very recently. I saw it over the weekend. You saw it, I believe, yesterday. So I just want to
Sunday,
kind of
Monday.
Sunday, Monday. Okay. So I just want to first give just our initial thoughts, um, how we felt about the film overall, just general feelings of how we feel it compares to the previous three films, and also where we think it's setting up the new universe going forward. So I'll go ahead and just give just some initial things I liked about it. First of all, visually it looked amazing. I thought the special effects were very well done. I think they did a very good job of introducing these new characters, just because you coming off three films where you set up Caesar as like that nigga, basically. But I feel like you had a tall task of bringing the audience in to a brand new group of characters that we don't know and getting us to connect with them so well. I thought Noah, who was played by Owen Teague, not familiar with that actor, but that's the voice actor who played Noah. I thought the film did a good job of getting us to connect with the story very well, of trying to find his family and get back connected with them. And I think that this is going to serve as a pretty good launching point to whatever they want to do going forward. Because if you've seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil anything. If you've seen it, you know that it leaves room for continuation and more films after this. So I'll park it right there before I get any deeper and leave it for my man Vito to give some of his thoughts.
Again, I loved it. I like all of the Planet of the Apes movies so far. Like you said, they've been done really well. The CGI's been good because it's monkeys, gorillas, apes talking. It had to look nice. The speech is choppy at times for the movie, but again, it's monkeys and apes talking. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people focus on now from something that happened a few years ago is lighting. The lighting was well done, even for the night scenes that there were. Um, Even transitioning from a dark area to a sunlit area. I wasn't familiar with any of the people in the movie, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
them some of them had some familiar voices. Um, and I'm gonna do my best to not throw any spoilers in there. But I will say the one thing that I didn't like about it was a few unanswered questions, and
Mhm.
like he said, it's a lot that sets you up, or it could be set up for something in the future. One of the things it didn't tell you was how far after the last movies this one takes place. So it's in the future, it just doesn't tell us how far in the future, which kind of left some gaps in the story for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from there, 100%. And I think not really knowing how much time has lapsed, it kind of leaves the audience kind of like a state of uncertainty as far as where we are in the
Yeah.
progression of apes at this point. I mean, you see when the film starts, apes have built whole communities. The planet is pretty much theirs at this point. The majority of humans can't even speak. Like most humans don't have the ability to speak at this point in whatever point in the future we are. So this truly is the planet of the apes at this point. The film, to your point, doesn't really tell us how much time has passed, but I'm assuming it's obviously been a lot of time if the majority of people have lost the ability to speak.
Right, and
And
they tell you, they say, and I think they mention this in the synopsis online. If you look it
mhm.
up, it says many generations after Caesar.
Okay,
The average ape lives anywhere between 30 and 45 years. So
okay,
that could be, I mean, again, it's how many do you consider many? It could be four, it could be five, it could be 10. It
yeah,
really doesn't say. So it leaves it open to a little bit of interpretation. But when you're looking at the environment of the film, it's more than four or five or 10
oh yeah,
because
yeah,
it's so broken down. But that's another thing that I want to hit on was like you said, the visual of the environment. It
was
really did a
great.
good job, even from opening, just popping.
Yeah, now the camera angles, the shots in this were amazing. And to your point though about the apes, one thing I really liked about this film is it really tried to tell human stories through the lens of the apes and like make you relate to their stories. Like you're looking at apes on screen, but their
Right.
stories felt so personal and very easy to connect to. it felt like you were watching human characters, even though you weren't. Which kind of piggybacks to my next point is the human character. There aren't that many humans in this film, thank God.
Hmm.
But the ones that are in there, like that, if there was a thing about this movie I personally didn't like, it was that. Um, it there was a point in the film, and there is, if you watch the trailers or you're familiar with any of the promotional materials for this movie, you know there's a female character who's like kind of on the adventure along with Noah. Um, I'm not familiar with who the actress is. The character's name was Nova or May, or I think they called
Nova.
her both. Yeah, they called her both.
I think
So
her real name was what
was
we ain't
May.
gonna get into
Yeah,
all that, but they were
yeah,
calling her Nova. And
yeah.
I'm gonna just jump in real quick. I was looking online, and
Mhm,
from the older movies,
mhm.
that name pops up a lot. The name
Ah,
Nova.
okay,
With
okay.
so I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was a nod to that, but
That makes
either
sense.
way, I mean, it's a cool little Easter egg.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm glad you provided that context then, because I didn't even know that. But the thing I felt that didn't really fit when they first introduced her character, I thought it worked, right? Like
Hmm.
you have this human character that's kind of just serving as like the central conflict of two different ape factions. You got Noah and his group, and there's I'm not going to get too deep into it, but there's another faction of apes in this film that are essentially taking Caesar's name and kind of corrupting it and using it for their own gain. And they're essentially the bad guys. Um, I was under the impression this human character would just be used as like the central figure or like the character that caused the central conflict between these two ape factions. They're hunting her. They're trying to protect her. Right. I had a without spoiling, there is a point in the film where she kind of feels like more of a central character
The
than I would have
main
liked her to.
character.
Yeah, there's a point in this movie
Hmm.
where
It kind
it
of
feels like she's a
transitions.
central character, and the film kind of stops and focuses on her. And I don't mean to be rude, but I'm sorry, her character is just not interesting enough for that. I
So
don't give a fuck
so
about her story, bro. I
so
don't.
I'm a disagree with you, man. That was
Okay.
one of the things I had an issue with. She was interesting, but my thing
Mm-hmm.
was she was too interesting, and
Okay.
they didn't really explain why or how she was that interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and again, without spoiling it, she knows a lot of things.
Yeah.
And if we're living in a time where humans can't speak, and they do body language and sign language and grunts and whatnot, and they're basically cavemen at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from how is she learning these things? Like, she knows a massive ton of information, and it's not answered. They give you some kind of, again, we're introduced to her in a movie, so we know there's a reason there's other humans around. It has to be because she was born. They don't explain how she got the way she was. They give you, I think, two or three times they may mention a story, but we're not we're left unknowing if any of those stories are true or not. And
Yeah.
that's why, like you said, I agree with you. She did become a main character, which I wasn't really a fan on. I was really digging Noah's arc, and
Mm-hmm.
his growth as a character. And she kind of just she came in at a certain point in the film, and she became the main character. Noah became a backup character, and for about, maybe it wasn't long, it was maybe 15, 20 minutes. But
Yeah.
to your point, she did become a main character, but I do believe, she was very interesting. But the lack of information that we have on her and her people and where she comes from, how she knows what she knows, makes it very uninteresting. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I feel about uh, when you look back at a movie like, I'm gonna just do The Dark Knight, or was that the last one?
The third one was Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight Rises. When you have Bane, it explained why and how he knew everything he knew. He was born in a prison. Um, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, he was
correct.
already in the prison.
Yeah.
His Talia was born in the prison, but it explains. She came back. She saved him. She taught him everything she knows, or everything the League of Shadows knew, And now he knows those things. It doesn't explain that in this film how she knows what she knows. She just knows things. So, let's say for instance, I'm use I don't know what to use. Let's say using a computer. You put a computer in front of a baby's not going to know what to do with it. She was a baby that sat in front of it and she immediately knew how to turn it on. She knew how to use words. She knew how to open programs and use those programs effectively, better
Yeah,
than the apes that we know have been growing and learning and becoming more civilized. So,
yeah,
and like you said, I'm really trying not to put any spoilers in there.
yeah. We can have to do
So
the spoiler
I'm
reviews at some point.
I'm or like it's just a spoiler running beforehand, but
Yeah,
definitely I think she was an interesting character. I think that she may have. It was only maybe three or four interesting characters in there, and there's a lot of side characters in this film.
yeah. I think the three characters that stand out the most to me are obviously Noah, the villain, who the main central villain doesn't really come into the film until like damn near an hour in. It takes a while for us to get introduced to him.
They
Uh,
mention them,
yeah, they mention him by name a few times, but you don't actually see him till you're like I'd say like a
right?
good hour and 15 into the film. And Nova is in her the way she's utilized at the beginning. She is an interesting character because you're right. She is clearly different from the
Mhm.
other humans we see throughout the film up to the point she's introduced. The problem I have with which you kind of touched on why she became the central character, and it's not even the fact that she became the central character. It's
Right,
the point in the story in which they decide to focus on her. Like the point in which they decide to focus on her was a point where I felt like Noah should have gotten the most attention. Like we are
right,
following Noah on this journey from the beginning to where he's, out on his adventure with his friends to the, thing that happens that leads him on his journey, the traumatic experience. And then you're following this character on this journey. And then it finally gets to the point where it's like, oh shit, okay, this is what we were leading up to, is him getting to this point. Okay,
right.
now the film wants to focus on this human character. I felt narrative wise that felt jarring. I can
Yeah, and
understand why they did it though, only because if you are setting up something in the future, and I, looking at the way this film is set up, it looks like
and
they're
the way
setting
it
up another
ended.
trilogy. Like it looks like
Yeah,
they're just setting up more Planet of the Apes films after this. Clearly, based on what we both saw at the end of the film with what she was doing, clearly they're setting up her, character to have some sort of central role in what's going forward. So if that's what you're doing, I understand the decision. But for this self-contained story, I feel like it took away from what you were building up to.
and her where she took over, like you said, it was Noah building up to do something.
Mm-hmm.
She came in, and again, you have she was supposed to be she's meant to be a side character
Yeah,
to help him progress the story, but she kind of takes over at a point, and then she just kind of disappears.
yeah.
So there's a point
She
in the
does some
story
fuck shit
where
first, and then she
she
disappears.
did a lot of fuck shit. So she kind of just disappears, and Noah's story continues,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not, it's again, it's I didn't think it was as meaningful, and
Mm-hmm.
then that hill that he got over, that
Mm-hmm.
climax of the film
Mm-hmm.
was really kind of, honestly, for me, when it got to that point,
Mm-hmm.
to the climax in the film, I was kind of ready for the film to be over at that point.
Yeah, it was a little. The climax and the ending was a little underwhelming
Yeah,
compared to how good the rest of the film prior to that had
right.
been. Like when we got to the climax, I was kind of like, I feel like the other Planet of the Apes movies handled this part better. Like when we got to the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War of the Planet of the Apes, I was like, oh, this shit. Like this is like actually an exciting way to end this conflict and get to the climax of the film. This kind of felt like when we got to the climax in this movie, it kind of felt like, all right, the best parts of this movie we already watched,
Yeah,
and we're just
and
waiting for this to end now.
it's partially to what you said. Noah had multiple companions throughout this film, and it got to that point in the film, and it was kind of like, well, do we really care about these other characters? We're going to
Mm-hmm,
focus on Noah and Nova, Noah and
mm-hmm,
Nova, Noah and Noah, Noah and Nova, and then we threw in the big bad. We threw
mm-hmm,
in the bad guy. just to have it in there. And I really feel like I know he accomplished something, but the
Yeah,
way that he accomplished it, it just didn't feel like he actually grew as a character. He didn't learn anything. Again, well, the only thing he learned, which a big thing that these movies are about, is trust.
yeah.
Um, he learned not to trust,
Humans,
not
pretty much.
to trust humans.
Yeah,
All
you
right?
learn humans is just some motherfuckers. Yes.
And again, that's how all these other movies has been. Okay, I trust this
Yeah,
human. Let's
but the
work
rest of y'all
together.
know.
I trust this human. Let's work together. All right, I trusted this human and these humans, but my partner or my friend doesn't trust these humans.
Hmm.
So let's try and work this out. And again, we know how that ended. Caesar
Yeah.
died.
Hmm.
And like Farhan said, it kind of ended where they're kind of big bad in the movie is perverting the the legacy that Caesar left.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually want to touch on the villain a little bit, because I kind of wish we had gotten more of him. He was actually a very interesting. He was a very interesting character. Just because I think the idea of, and I mean, it makes perfect sense if you view apes as this, a species that's progressing and evolving past human. Obviously, they're going to start to develop human characteristics, behave in human type ways. So taking a messiah type figure like Caesar, which is how he's viewed within the Apes, um, taking a character like that and co-opting his words and corrupting them and using them for your own personal gain is very much something a human being would do with a figure like that. So I thought that
It's
was
been
an
done.
interesting. Yeah, it's been done several times. So I'm very glad that the film decided to take that route with the villain. I thought that was very interesting. I just don't. I feel like there could have been more done with that, honestly, to build on that villain a little bit prior to just getting him an hour
Right.
into the film. I just because we already saw his group of people prior to that, right? Like his little faction and
Yeah.
group was in the movie throughout its entirety, right? So the fact that we didn't get him until an hour in, we only had really so much time to kind of watch him grow and be
Yeah.
who he is and understand, his message and what his goal is. And I felt like this is, to me, based on what I've seen from films in the past, a good villain is rare. A really good villain is rare.
You
And
know
I
what
thought
though?
there was something they could have been done with him to make him a villain of that caliber.
I think it's hard in this day and age to make good villains. Period. In any
Yeah.
film, you go
Hmm.
back and you look at the Marvel films. You'll say, that was a good movie. I liked it, but
Villain sucks.
yeah, the villain sucked. Was he actually a villain?
Hmm.
Now this one, I think, in the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I think they definitely set him up to be a good villain. But I agree with you. An hour into the film, I'm gonna see say an hour and a half into the film because what it's. I think it's a good. It's at least 2 hours 15 minutes.
Yeah, roughly.
So maybe an hour and a half into the film, you finally see him, and I think it's safe to say his name only because it's online. It's,
Yeah, yeah.
like big stuff. So it's Proxima Maxima, something like that.
Uh, uh,
Uh,
Proxima Caesar, I think is his name, because he used
yeah.
Caesar's name.
So
Yeah.
he used his name. So he's going by Proximus, and then at a certain point in the film, he just changes and says, "Okay, they're going to call me Proximus Caesar."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like say, like there's no reason why this entire time they've been calling you one name, and now they're adding Caesar to it.
Hmm.
He's done nothing throughout the film, and we
He just
get to
pops
this
up.
point. He just pops up, and we get to this point in the film, and they give you a rush thing of what he likes and why he chooses the aesthetic that he chooses, and it's very rushed. And then he tells you what he's going to do. I want X, and I just want X, and he doesn't he doesn't really tell you why. It's a
Hmm.
half baked reason. So
Yes,
I
it
want
is.
X. I'm going to do this, and you're going to help me do this.
Hmm.
And it's really no real reason that at that point in the film, Caesar should have been Caesar should have been a part of the film.
Yeah.
If again the conflict is between Caesar and and the bad guy, but
Hmm.
there's so many apes that could have filled Caesar's place at that point. It's
Yeah.
no real reason why it couldn't have been any other uh, ape in there. And that's
Hmm.
where, again, speaking to your point about the main character, it kind of every character I feel like has diminished his role as the main character.
Hmm.
Like I said, when Proxima came into the scene, his big thing is he wants Nova. There's no big reason. And again, like I said, my thing with it, the villain approximate is he just kind of, and I guess the same thing with Nova. It just kind of they just kind of happen, and they gave you a rush. They gave you a rush background, rush story, and rush goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And the frustrating thing with me about the villain is that I felt like he had a lot of potential.
Yes.
Because like you said, he was very rushed. But what they were rushing with, I was like, wait, no, y'all, this is good material. You could, if you built upon this, there'd be something here. Because his reasoning is obviously a very corrupted reasoning, right? He's coming at it from an evil perspective. But his reasoning and his goal, from an ape's perspective, if you're an evolving species, makes sense. And
Right.
without giving too much away, essentially, without spoiling too much, essentially his goal is humans were able to accomplish X, Y, and Z when they were dominating the planet. Apes, we ain't got there yet. How do we take apes from here and get them to that point? Like,
And
you know what I'm saying?
you
That's
know
a
a
very
good
cool
a
concept.
good analogy for it. What he was
Yeah,
trying to do, he was trying to open Pandora's box.
absolutely.
He was trying to
He was.
advance faster than he
And
should
they were,
have.
yeah, absolutely. He was
And
trying
if
to
you
give them too much knowledge than what they were ready to handle at that point.
right, and when you watch the movie, you'll see what Pandora's box is.
Yeah, no, that's a phenomenal point actually. Because when the film finally shows you what he's trying to get a hold of and what he's trying to accomplish, you're like, oh yeah, this if this happened, if apes
Yeah,
became this advanced this quickly, you can see like, oh yeah, this could change the
this
dynamic of
would be
how the
bad.
planet is. Yeah, like this shit could get real quick. And I thought that was a very cool concept for a villain in this context because you're taking a character who views his people and says, "Okay, we've taken over the planet. This is ours now. Human beings are secondary species. We are the dominant species now on planet Earth. How do I take my species as it is now and advance us to the point where we maintain our dominance?" Obviously, he's coming from an evil perspective. He's the villain, but I think the best villains are villains who obviously you see that they're evil and you don't necessarily agree with how they're going about bringing their plan to life, but you identify with their plan and understand. That is a plan I can understand from someone who's power hungry, right? Like this is a person who's power hungry.
Okay,
He's
I think I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, like he's a power. The film sets him up as he's power hungry. The
Yeah,
dude called himself Proxima Caesar. He wears a crown. Like you know what
wears
I'm
a crown.
saying? The way he comes in, the speech he gives, like you see the type of person or ape in this
Yeah,
case the film is trying to set up. So now that we've been introduced to how this character is, what would be a logical plan for that character? And in my opinion, that character going to go like, I think I'm the new Caesar. I'm the new Messiah for the age. And I'm going to be the one to lead us into this new age of dominance. How do I do that? I think the plan he had makes sense. It's just to your point, it was rushed through and wasn't given enough
right.
time and care to be fleshed out in a way to be as great and as effective as I feel like it could have been. It was just kind of like, hey y'all, here's what's going on. All right, we're gonna move on with the rest of the film. It's like I feel like you had lived there just for a little bit and developed him as a villain a little bit
Yeah.
more. It just would have added to the experience of the film overall.
So the problem again, and 100% agree with you. The only thing I was iffy on at first was the villain
Yeah.
because that's what that again. I'm gonna reach back to Marvel because we've been getting a lot of villains through them.
Mm-hmm.
They're making likable villains. Um, they're
Mm-hmm.
making okay. Well, I can see why they're doing it. I just think they're going about it a bad way. They want you to believe that they're somewhat good,
Yeah.
but a great villain again. Some great villains are do have some good reasons, but most of their reasons are just terrible.
Yeah.
And he, you know what, he kind of hit on that, because again, as humans, if we find out that apes are trying to take over the world, where
Hmm.
we're at in our standpoint is we want to keep this, we want to secure
Self-preservation.
this, and we want to make it easier for ourselves to protect ourselves and then remain the top of the food chain. Essentially, we're going to do the same thing. um I had a point and I actually lost it because I got tracked back down to this villain thing.
Yeah.
And
No, but
again, it's just
no,
the,
you're
the
right.
the
You're right.
villain thing, man. They really want us to have likable villains. Where was it Koba in the last ones,
Cobble
the
was a
last
great
two
villain.
films?
Cobble was
The
in Dawn. I think he was. Yeah, I think he was just the villain in
Yeah,
Dawn.
it,
I don't.
it
Yeah.
was the guy Caesar, was bumping heads with. Like there was no let's live together. It
Yeah. There's
was
no, not,
we're
not
taking
that.
over. We're going to run this. He good villain. His reasons were simple. It wasn't complicated. He did, and again, that maybe that's just
I
me
just can't.
wanting.
I'm kidding. He was Kendrick Lamar. He just hates him. He,
Maybe I
it's,
just sometimes I want to just enjoy the movie without trying to figure things out. And me and you talked about this weekend. So sometimes the simpler answer is the most effective, and having a villain with a simple plan or a simple motivation, he can do whatever with that. He can have whatever plans, but the motivation, it needs to be simple. It's clear that they're a villain. It's clear. There's no argument about it. People are still debating if Killmonger in Black Panther was a anti-hero. He's a villain.
he's a
He's a villain.
he's a straight.
He was choking up grandmas. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
like come on, y'all. He's very much a villain. Like I don't care how much of his a message you identify with. That was not a good person. Like come on, y'all. What are we doing? Um, but I think touching on the villain conversation is especially looking forward. Now that
Yeah.
we've seen kind of the world they're going to be playing in now. And I think this film was directed by Westfall, who did some of. I think I mentioned did some of the Maze Runner films. I don't know if he's going to be continuing on with whatever they continue to do in the future. But like I said, this film does set up something going forward. We don't know. It looks like they're just setting up a sequel. Doesn't really give a clear indication on where they're going, but it looks like some additional butting heads are going to happen between apes and humans. It's to some extent. We don't know. We don't know what.
And you know what? To add to that conversation about more movies,
Mm-hmm.
um, we've only been mentioning two factions.
Mm-hmm.
It's Noah's tribe and
Yeah.
Proximus tribe. There's multiple factions in the film. You see one more faction, there's a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
distinct character a part of that faction. But when you come across, you get to a certain part in the film, you realize that there's multiple factions. They show a widespread picture of the factions, or an area where they would be, but again, they don't they don't say anything about it. There's no communication. When Proximus is talking, he doesn't say, "Hey, um, my right hand man is this because of that. My left
Mm-hmm.
hand man is this because it's that. I got this, and this going on. They're from this tribe. They're from this tribe. They're from this clan." It's no explanation about it. And again, that's just speaking to them rushing it. They spent so much focusing on the journey that once they got to the destination, they didn't have any time left to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the first when he started the journey, maybe like you said, maybe 20-30 minutes into the film,
Yeah.
and it was just journey, 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 journey. We see a bad guy, but it's not the big bad guy. We see
Yeah.
another bad guy, not the big bad guy. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like you said, it's last 45 to an hour of the movie where we focus on Proxima. And
Yeah.
again, we're not focusing on him because we still have to tell Noah's story. So the journey, listen, I was gonna get this like a I don't know what we gonna go off of. I was gonna give it like a 7, 8, or a 10. But I think my rating is going down as we talk
The more you
about
talking
this.
about it,
Yeah, the more we talk about it, because again, like I said, they focused so much on the journey. When they got to the destination, there was really nothing that they could do. It there was nothing left to do because they had no time, and there was a
yeah,
lot they could have done.
yeah. It was the I think the concept of what they wanted to do was good. It just the execution didn't live up to what it could have
Yeah,
been. And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. You kind of just reiterated it. Like the journey to get to the climax was the best part of the film.
yeah.
And then the climax itself, I was expecting to be on the same level quality wise, and when it wasn't, I was kind of left disappointed a little bit. And I think that to your point kind of retracts what my rating would have been. Like if the third act had been executed great, like this
I'm
probably would
sorry.
have been an eight. That probably would have been an eight. Like
Yeah.
if this was done well, it probably would have. If that third act was done well, it would have been an eight. Like and then kind of seeing the way I'm not gonna say the third act falls apart, but it does kind of go. It kind of makes you go like one of these things ain't like the other.
So,
Like
and
you know what I'm
to
saying?
your thing, like I said, I was thinking the same thing. It didn't really fall apart, but it wasn't really. It was. It
It was
didn't fall
rushed.
apart, but it was just put together. So,
Yes. They
so
threw that shit. They was like, "Here you go. This is the end." It's like, well,
they
no.
they didn't
Especially with
take
the
the time to
concepts you were
craft it.
introducing. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. They didn't. They did not take their time and craft that ending well, in my
yeah,
opinion. And I think it's disappointing because of the concepts that could have been introduced. You know what I'm saying? In terms of how fleshed out the villain could have been, how fleshed out the human character, because there's more than one
hmm
key human character in this film. I'm not going to spoil anything else. There's more that could have been done with the from the human perspective of apes have taken over the planet. So
you're right.
now, from a human's perspective, what how does that impact where you are in the social hierarchy now on planet Earth, and what's your response to that going to be? They touched on
You're
that
right.
a little bit,
A little.
but it felt like they were introducing so many different concepts in the third act, but they didn't have time to expand on them. So it
And
just
you
felt
know
like it was
what?
just different things getting thrown at you, but you weren't really able to live with them and understand what was being thrown at
So one of the things that you mentioned was, you like that it wasn't focusing more on humans. And the older movies, they again, it's still Planet of the Apes. It's about
you.
apes taking over the world, but it's told more at a human's perspective. The
Yeah,
older movies, even the
hmm
one with Mark Wahlberg, which was kind of terrible.
yeah. I've heard that
Um,
one wasn't good.
it was kind of terrible, but it's still told from a human's perspective.
Hmm.
So I think, like you said, what they're trying to do with these newer ones, with the exception of the first one, it was told they're more ape centered,
Yep.
and with this one, I think they tried to juggle it,
Yeah.
and they didn't do it properly because
Yeah.
again, when Nova shows up, she just shows up.
Hmm.
She's not a main character because we don't know anything about her, and as the main character, we should. And she's a side character. Even still, as a side character, we should know things about her. We get to that point, and then it becomes okay. What is her motive? It tells us what her motivation for doing
Hmm.
what she's doing is and why she's going where she's going. But again, it doesn't tell you how she got there. With Noah, it tells you why he's doing what he's doing, how he got to where he got there, how he knows what he knows. You know, and even it touches on his skills at the opening of the movie. It
And they stay
touches on his
consistent with it
skills,
too.
and they stay consistent with it. But with every other character, it was just it. You need 10 points to build a person.
Hmm.
Noah had 10 points. Everybody else had 6 or 7 points. 6 or 7 points. So again, I just keep it's getting lower. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna just I'm gonna throw my score in now. I'm gonna throw it in at a 6.5.
Oh, really? That's a little
Six
lower than
point
I
five.
thought you were going.
Again,
Okay.
again, it was the cinematography was great. All right.
Hmm.
The opening story was great up until it got to the climax. And even then, some things before it got to the climax, um, with the characters and their motivations weren't really fleshed out, or they just didn't have time to put it. Because I'm sure there's deleted 20, 40 deleted scenes somewhere that'll tell
Hmm.
us all this. Um, but I think I'm gonna leave it at a. I can do a 7, but a 7 is being generous for me.
Mm,
But
okay.
again, that's the critique in it. I love the movie. I take away all my critiques, and I would give it a 8.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna settle in at a 7. I think there's enough good done in this film to justify that rating. I think the things, like I said, that detract from it are the final act does not live up to what I thought it would. It felt
Mm-hmm.
like we went on this journey leading up to this climax, and it wasn't really executed the way I would have liked it to be, given how good the first two acts of the film were. So I'm settling in at a 7. I think overall the characters were done very well. I thought Noah was a perfect kind of reset character after Caesar, of this kind of young, up and coming of age type of deal. He's still figuring things out. He's learning about the world. He's figuring out the dynamic between apes and humans and what that's like. Like you kind of see as he learns more about the world, it helps the audience learn more about the world. I thought he was a perfect protagonist for this new iteration of where the story's going. And then I thought the villain was done well for what he did. I just think that there was more potential there. That was just kind of they just kind of left it on the field and didn't really give us, what that character could have been. It was very rushed through. So all of that, I will give it a 7. Um, I'm thinking we're going to get more from this universe going forward. I don't know what yet, but I'm excited to see what they do. I think there's a lot of potential here with this new world that they built going forward into the future of apes being the dominant ones on the planet now. And I can kind of see a little bit of a role reversal now, where Dawn of Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes, it felt like apes and humans were coexisting, but the apes were
Right.
like they were nipping at the bud, like, hey, y'all,
Nipping
this
at the
y'all
heels of
planet for right
humans. I'm
now.
coming.
This y'all planet for right now, but like y'all know what time it is. In a minute or two, this is about to be our. And it kind of feels like the roles have reversed here now, where humans are very much like, hey y'all, they didn't kind of took our shit. What are we gonna do about it?
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see what happens going forward with the story and how they decide to execute it in some of the future films. But yeah, that is our review of Kingdom on the Planet of the Apes. I liked it. Sounds like Fico a little less enthusiastic than me.
No, I liked it after I watched it, and again, if I just give it, if I sit down and just watch it without doing the critique of it, I think I would be okay with sitting comfortably at that 7.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely a 7 for me as well. A lot to like in this film. If you
Yeah.
guys have a chance, I would definitely recommend go seeing it. If you haven't seen any of the previous Rise of Planet of the Apes, Dawn or War, highly recommend seeing those as well. All very good films, and it's rare that a trilogy or a franchise, I should say,
Yeah.
can produce four quality films, no matter how high or low you may rank them. All four films that we've gotten from this iteration of Planet of the Apes have been quality. So
And to be
I want to give
honest
this
with
franchise
you,
props for that.
you don't even have to, it's good to have that background from the first
Hmm.
three films, but if you go into it just sight unseen
Hmm.
without seeing any of the other
Oh yeah.
movies, you will get it. And I think, you know what? And I'm a bump it up to a straight 7 just for that,
Hmm.
because they gave a really quick rundown of things and they explained the past and the history of the world in
Hmm.
a broad sense that honestly the other three movies had. It covered all the other three movies in that way.
Hmm.
So it where you can just jump into this movie, and where they can, if they want to, they can make a second trilogy from this point, like for her own
Yep.
son,
Yep.
and it would, and maybe some other things would be fleshed out in that way, and maybe that's why this wasn't as fleshed out. But you can definitely go into this film without watching the other three, but it's great to have that background.
Absolutely, absolutely, and no, that is another positive about this film as well. Is it's very much a self-contained story, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to have the context of the previous three to get it. It's helpful to have that, just
Right.
so you to understand the bigger picture of what these characters are thinking and going through. But you don't necessarily have to have that to be able to understand and enjoy the story. That's a very good point. So yeah, that's what we got, y'all. That's our review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Very quality franchise so far. They've done a very good job putting these films together. And until next time, we'll be coming to you guys with more reviews going forward. So stay tuned to what we got coming up. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you.